Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I thank you for joining me for Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. Now, on today's program, I'm going to be discussing the prophesied world government. It's prophesied in Revelation chapter 13, and the Bible gives us really a clear picture of the nations that will be involved in this world government, and it's one of the ways that we prove that we absolutely are in the end time. We've got a document that we've written for years and published in our magazine, 9 absolute proofs we're living in the end time. And the ongoing establishment of this world government, this prophesied world government, is one of the ways that we can prove conclusively that we are living in the end time. Of course, the world government, along with the world religion and the precursors to the mark of the beast, there's a lot of things that we can use. All of the prophecies are converging at the same time. Well, I'm going to be talking about the world government today and about kind of how far we are off into that, and give you a couple, 2 or 3 different proofs for that. Before I do that, I want to mention and to announce a prophecy conference that will be held by Irvin Baxter this coming weekend. It's in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and he's going to be teaching on From Here to Armageddon. So in our prophecy conferences, when Irvin Baxter and myself go out and teach them, one of the first lessons that we're teaching, the most current lesson, is From Here to Armageddon. What are the things you need to be watching for? Because we're watching precursors to all of them, and some of them are coming to pass right now. On the events From Here to Armageddon, that final 70th week of Daniel's vision, Daniel's 70 weeks, this is the 70th week, and it could be starting in just the near future. And so then we'll have 7 years left. So he's teaching a lesson this coming Saturday night, August 12th at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Pentecostals of Jonesboro, and that's 5312 South Caraway Road, Jonesboro, Arkansas, 72404. And we would love to have you join us. Join Irvin 6 to 8 Saturday night, and then again at the same church, Jonesboro, Arkansas, he's going to be teaching on the breaking prophetic fulfillments. And that's always a crowd favorite, because we give updated current proofs of how current events are showing how prophecies written 2,000 to 2,500 years ago is coming to pass. And then at the end, there is a Q&A session. And so this is going to be held Sunday morning, Sunday night, Sunday morning, the same location. Sunday morning is from 10 to 12. And then, like I said, following the lesson, there's a Q&A session. So everybody in the crowd would have an opportunity to get a microphone or to walk up to a microphone and ask Irvin a question and get their question answered. So it's really a good time. So if you're anywhere near Jonesburg, Arkansas, and you'd like to go visit a conference this weekend, Saturday night, Sunday morning, and all the details are listed on our website, endtime.com. You can check it out. And what a great time. We've done probably thousands of these conferences over the years, and everybody always has a great time. You learn something new, something you probably may not have caught on the radio, and you can get a chance to meet Irvin, meet the people working at the table. We'll have products there for sale, and it's kind of neat because if you buy products at a conference, you don't have to pay shipping, and they run different sales and different things. And so I think Doug Norvell and his wife Tina will be at this coming conference. You'll get to meet them, and of course Irvin's wife, Judy. So why not go? If you're anywhere around there, we've had people drive from 3 or 4 hours out to go to one of these conferences. What a great time. So if you'd like to join Irvin this weekend, all the information and everything is listed on our website, and we'd love to have you join us. So, the prophesied one world government. You've heard, if you've listened to the radio program at all, you've listened to us talk about a world government for years now. And it's the prophesied world government. And what we want to do is to keep you up to date on the situation, because we've got so many people that call us all the time and say, how do you guys know we're living in the end time? Prove it. And if they talk to me on the phone, I'll say, okay, which prophecy do you want me to talk about? And they sit there kind of shocked, because they're expecting me to kind of be taken aback. Oh no, how am I going to prove we're in the end time? That's easily proven. And so I've got many ways. I could talk about any prophecy you want to talk about. We're looking at precursors to every single one of them. And so on today's program, I'm going to be talking about the world government. How close are we to this? Is it years away? Has it already been fulfilled hundreds of years ago? Or are we in the process of the establishment of this final human world government that will be here on the earth? Well, I can tell you that that's where we're at. We're there right now. We're watching the ongoing establishment of this. Now, are we at the culmination of it? Yes. We're not at the beginning. They started this thing decades ago. And we're at the culmination of this. And in the very near future, the Antichrist is going to usurp authority over this world government and try to get every person on earth to bow down to him and to worship him or pledge allegiance to him. So the world government, the Bible prophesies that a world government is going to be formed right before the second coming of Jesus Christ and the battle that really all of us know about, the Battle of Armageddon. You've heard about it. You've watched movies on it. You've heard about it over the years, talked about the Battle of Armageddon, the final battle on earth. Well, this world government will be in power when that battle takes place. And so we're going to talk about the world government today because it's being formed right now. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the prophecy. The prophecy is found in Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. Now, there are other prophecies about this, but this is one of the very key ones that we'll focus on today. So here's what it says. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. This is John being given a vision in Revelation chapter 13. I saw a beast rise up out of the sea having 7 heads. Now picture this. I know some of you might be driving in a vehicle or waiting to, waiting on your food in a line or something. I don't know. But you got to picture this. John sees a vision of this giant beast come up out of the sea. 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now, if you saw that vision, you'd have thought, Mike, I ate some bad pizza before I went to sleep or something. I mean, what a vision, but it's very symbolic, and it has to do with every person under the sound of my voice. So, everything in this prophecy has meaning. It's all symbolic. For instance, the 10 horns, they mean something. Those are the revived Holy Roman Empire. And those 10 horns represent a 10-nation union that will form an alliance with the Antichrist just before the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. Now, a beast in Bible prophecy always symbolizes a nation or a kingdom. And always in Bible prophecy, that's true. So when you see a beast like the bear, it represents Russia. When you see the lion, that represents Great Britain. And so the leopard is Germany, and so on. And so it represents a nation or a kingdom. So this is a prophecy about a kingdom. And then this particular prophecy happens to be the prophecy of the end time one world government of the Antichrist. Now, continuing on in verses 1 and 2 of Revelation 13, it says, and upon the head, his heads, or the heads of this beast, is the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So it's got the body of a leopard, which is Germany. The feet were as the feet of a bear, which was Russia. His mouth was as the mouth of a lion, which is Great Britain. And the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. So who's the dragon? If you jump back one chapter to Revelation chapter 12, Revelation 12:9 tells us that the dragon is the devil and Satan. So the dragon is going to give this entity, this one world government, its seat, power, and great authority. So the one world government that's being established in the earth today is being driven. The power behind that is satanic. It's not a good thing. A lot of people say, well, hey, man, the process of globalization and the world government and everything, that's a great thing. No, it's not a good thing. It's a very bad thing, because it's going to be the Antichrist's kingdom when he comes on earth. Now, in Daniel 7, we learn that there's different animals, and they symbolize kingdoms or the rulers of those kingdoms. So this combo beast, again, depicts a union of Russia, Great Britain, Germany, and the European Union. In Daniel 7, they're all separate beasts. In Revelation 13 are separate nations. Revelation 13, they're all combo. It's a combo beast. They're all unified together. It's the prophecy of the end-time world government. Now, I've got something I want to talk about a little later in the program, but I've got to give you a little history behind that and what happened today or recently in the news. And I'm going to go back to Strobe Talbot's article that he wrote, The Birth of a Global Nation. Now, obviously, Strobe Talbot, who was the Deputy Secretary of the State of the Deputy Secretary of State for the United States under Bill Clinton, he wrote, he's a one-worlder. He believes in one world government to his eyeballs, along with Bill Clinton and many others. But he was his Deputy Secretary of State when he was in office, and so he wrote an article for Time magazine called "The Birth of a Global Nation," or a one world government. That's what he was saying, and this was back in July 20th of 1992. I want to read you some excerpts from that because it's going to help explain what I'm going to get to later on in the program. Because what they've tried to do is to mask this establishment of a world government. They say, oh, it's not really a world government, it's just global governance. Well, there's no difference in that. And what they say is, I've actually heard Strobe Talbot give a definition of, well, it's only a world government if they have one building where everybody looks to, and one government, and one all the national flags go away and there's one flag. And so everybody answers to this one world governing where there's just a building and one leader and this, that, and the other. Well, that's actually not the case. Now, there are people who want that. The Parliament of Man, this one world governing body, like we would have Washington, D.C., and we all looked at that as our government. And he said, well, because there's so many different organizations like the United Nations, World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, and all these governments are coming under those umbrellas, it's really just a system of global governance, not world government. There's no difference at all. But they try to spin it as that to say, oh, it's not really a world government. Well, it actually is a world government. There's no difference at all in a global government and the governance of the globe. There's no difference. Even Ban Ki-moon said there's only really one true flag for everybody on earth, and that's the blue flag of the United Nations. So that's what they would love to have. Do away with the nation state, and everybody answer to a one world governing entity, a one world government. So, and I'm going to show you that because in Strobe Talbot's article in Time magazine, The Global Nation, The Birth of a Global Nation, he states this. He says, the human drama whether played out in history books or headlines, is often not a confusing spectacle, but a spectacle about confusion. Boy, that made sense, didn't it? The big question these days is, which political forces will prevail? Those stitching nations together or those tearing them apart? Which one's going to be the leader? That's what these guys all want to know. Who's going to lead this? Because they know there's a world government. He goes on to state, here is one optimist's reason for believing unity will prevail over disunity. In other words, not nation states that all have their own governments, but a one world government. And integration over disintegration. In fact, this is Strobe Talbot. He says, I'll bet, and this is so key, because remember, this is what, over 20 years ago now. He says, I'll bet that within the next 100 years, and he says, I'm giving the world time for setbacks and myself time to be out of the betting game by that point, just in case I lose this one. He says that nationhood as we know it will be obsolete. We'll do away with the nation state. And that's what they're trying to do that right now. When you hear the term open borders, it means do away with the nation state. He says the nation state's going to be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority or a world government. And a phrase briefly fashionable in the mid-20th century, citizen of the world, will have assumed real meaning by the end of the 21st century. So he's saying, I'm going to bet that, and he was remember the Deputy Secretary of State under Bill Clinton. He says, I'm going to bet that by the end, in 100 years, that all nation states will be done away with and everybody's going to answer to a single global authority, a world government. All countries, he states, are basically social arrangements, accommodations to changing circumstances. No matter how permanent and even sacred they may seem at any one time, in fact, they are all artificial and temporary. He's sitting here in the United States when he's writing this. A patriot would never say anything like that. Somebody who believes we signed the Declaration of Independence, they'd never say anything about that about the United States. But people who believe in a one world government are completely, totally ready to yield up the sovereignty of the United States to a one world governing body. The previous administration, many administrations have been willing to do that in spades. So are we headed into this world government? We're not headed into it. We're there. We're at the culmination of this thing. It's formed as we speak. And eventually, in the near future, they're going to get teeth like they want. So Strobe Talbot continues and he says, through the ages, there have been an overall trend towards larger units claiming sovereignty and paradoxically a gradual demonization of how much true sovereignty any one country actually has. The best mechanism for democracy, whether at the level of multinational state or that of the planet as a whole, which is what they want, he states is not a powerful Leviathan or centralized superstate, but then he says, right after that, but a federalization, which is exactly what he said we didn't need in the previous phrase. He says a union of separate states that yield up their power or that allocate central powers to a central government, a world government, while retaining many others for themselves. So he states federalism has already proved the most successful of all political arrangements and organizations, while, like the World Federalist Association, which is devoted to a world government, have for decades advocated it as the basis for, get this, global government. So this is what he's advocating. But they try to hide it and to mask it in all these different terms and saying, well, we're not looking for a global government, but we want all of the nation states to yield up their sovereignty to this federalized central government. And you sit there and you read that and you go, what in the world did he just say? So, ladies and gentlemen, Strobe Talbot made those statements all the way back in 1992. Here we are sitting here in 2017. Now, I will tell you that Bill Clinton brought him to the White House for the next, after this article, for the next 7 years in 93. So the guy who believes in a world government to his eyeballs, he was brought to the White House to work under Bill Clinton. And he and Bill Clinton had actually been Rhodes Scholars, roommates when they were both Rhodes Scholars in London, way back in the early days. And so you wonder, how are all these guys running together? Were they being groomed early on? Absolutely they were. Now, to believe in a one world government, because both of those guys were one worlders to their eyeballs, I promise you. One more thing that's really important is that when Strobe Talbot left the White House in the year 2000, he took a job as president of the Brookings Institute, one of the #1 think tanks in the United States. And so, how do you think he got that job? Because they're not going to put people in those positions who do not hold the position of the establishment, which is pro-world government. These guys are liberal internationalists. And so you look at this article that was written by Strobe Talbot clear back in 1992. Absolutely. One of the Rhodes Scholars, good friends with Bill Clinton, absolutely promoting a world government. He says, in the next 100 years, I'll bet that all nation states are done away with and we're all answering to a one world government, a central governing authority. World government. And the Bible prophesied 2,000 years ago that just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, there would be a world government established in the earth that the Antichrist will eventually usurp authority over, causing the people of the earth to bow down and worship him. The Bible says everyone whose name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life will bow down and worship the beast. So obviously the best thing is to have the Bible gives you a guarantee. If your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life, you won't do that. And so that would be a good thing to have happen as soon as possible if it's not already written there. So, with Strobe Talbot continuing on in an interview recorded in February 7th in 2008. Now we're jumping forward 8 years from when he ended office with Bill Clinton. February 7th, 2008, Strobe Talbot was obviously the president of the Brookings Institution at that time. He discussed his new book, The Great Experiment. I have the book, a wonderful book, but it's all about world government. He's a great writer. The problem is what he's trying to do, his belief system, it's all about world government. So The Great Experiment, it was the story of ancient empires, modern states, the quest for a global nation. He's driving towards a world government. He's saying, hey, there have been world empires that have run the entire world. The Babylonian Empire, Medes and the Persians, the Grecians, the Romans. So you all would recognize those as world empires. Rome ruled the entire known world during its heyday. So he's saying there have always been global governing situations. And he's pushing for another one as we speak. And they started it back in 1945 with the United Nations. That was the most recent effort towards a world government. Now, in an interview in 2008, the interview asked Strobe Talbot this, and I'm going to get to my point that I'm making in the next article, which will be in the next section here coming up. The interview asked him this, and they're talking about world government. They're sitting at the Council on Foreign Relations, and he says, the interviewer asked Strobe Talbot, how can people associated mostly with the Democratic Party talk about global governance without, and they know what they're talking about, a world government, without setting off alarm bells that the one worlders and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission are coming for them, both their guns and their Bibles, and still turn into a one world government. So he's saying, because people say one world government, everybody goes, oh, they're coming to get our Bibles and our guns and this, that, and the other. That's what they think. But the fact of the matter is, Strobe Talbott answers this question like this. He says, well, you mean, what is the vocabulary of global governance? Because the vocabulary is wrong. We can't use that now. He said that what's the vocabulary? He is asking Strobe Talbott this. What's the vocabulary of global governance that is politically and culturally most appealing? Now, Strobe Talbott is sitting here, having worked for Bill Clinton, and was currently at that time president of the Brookings Institute. Strobe Talbott says this, or in answer to his question, or to put it differently, why is global governance almost a no-no phrase for those who want to avoid political radiation poisoning? He said, I actually did some research on this, and I discovered that the phrase global governance is assiduously avoided by and large. Global governance is a phrase which is used quite commonly in the curricula of universities and around the world of publications and different things. But generally speaking, Strobe Talbott says, I certainly learned very quickly the hard way to avoid it when I was in the State Department. He said, I was working for Bill Clinton, who was a liberal internationalist, well, a person who believes in a world government. And he says the term global governance does still have the association of the whir of the rotors of black helicopters getting ready to land in our schoolyards. But he says, you know what? I tell you what I'm going to do. I know we're coming up to a break, and I want to make sure that I hit this next point because it's so critical. So I'm going to wait till after the break to hit the point, because I want you to get this, because it's going to flow into the rest of my program, and I don't want you to miss this. So I know that if you want to hear the rest of the program and you only got 30 minutes of it, go to endtime.com and you can see this broadcast live or archived for several days. You can watch it at your leisure.
Through the years, we have seen God perform miracle after miracle at End Time Ministries, and we are trusting God for another season of miracles this summer. So we decided that we wanted to share our miraculous story and boost your faith by offering you one of our newest DVDs titled The Miracle Called End Time for free with any purchase of $29 or more. To request your copy, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and mention the code MIRACLE, or order online at endtime.com.
Most people have dreamed of someday walking on the ground where Jesus walked over 2,000 years ago. You don't have to wait any longer. Make this the year for your life-changing experience. This is your official invitation to join Judy and me for our 2017 Fall End Time Prophecy Tour. The trip of a lifetime is a severe understatement. If you could travel to any place on earth, your first choice should definitely be the Holy Land. There is simply no other place like it. Call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 for more information. Ask to speak to Holly or Jana about the tour.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
So we're talking about the global government that's being established in the earth today. In 2008, Strobe Talbott's in an interview at the Council on Foreign Relations. The interviewer asked him, what's the vocabulary that we can use about global government that's not going to set alarm bells off? What's kind of politically correct now? Because we're still trying to establish a world government, but you can't really say the term global government because people get scared by that. So what's something that we can use? And Strobe Talbott says, well, global governance is a phrase which is used quite commonly in the curricula of universities and around the world and publications, etc. But generally speaking, I certainly learned very quick the hard way to avoid it when I was in the State Department. Now, this is key. He says, I was working for President Bill Clinton, who was a liberal internationalist. Again, a guy who believes in world government to his eyeballs. And he says the term global governance does still have association with the whir of the rotors of black helicopters getting ready to land in schoolyards. But he says global governance, in the sense that the phrase is properly used, is not a dream. It's a reality, and we've had it for a long time. He says in the modern age, i.e. now, we have global governance in lots of forms. Some of these would include the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and all of those are established. The World Bank, the International Criminal Court, all of those are established to be global governing entities. And Strobe Talbott says it's just a fact of life. So, but he said, I realized early on the hard way that if you want to avoid political career poisoning, you can't say terms like that. You've got to dumb it down. You've got to water it down to where the population doesn't freak out every time you say world government. Because a lot of people are educated enough to know that there's a world government coming on the scene and that they're wanting us to yield up our sovereignty to this one world government. And so people are alarmed when you start talking about world government. So they've watered it down over the years. So you see, though, that the leader, the president of the Brookings Institution, had said, look, it's already a fact of life. This isn't coming, it's here. And this interview was back in 2008. So those who believe in a world government, they know some phrases set off alarm bells in the population, and they illuminate their schemes. That's what they're trying to do. They've got an agenda that they're pushing. And so they don't say the name of the agenda. They use these just different phrases and things, terms that people can't really relate to, and they can't put their finger on it. So that way they'll buy into it. They will allow it to be attached to their life and to rule their life and to control them. So therefore they know that they have to use these leaders, these globalists, they know they have to use terminology that softens the blow, so it will lull people back to sleep. I thought you said it was a world government. No, it's not a world government. It's just global governance. It's not the same thing. So instead of world government, they went to global governance. And then people started realizing, hold on a minute, global governance is the same as a world government. So then they went to globalization to kind of put you back to sleep. But then people realized, hold on a minute, globalization, that's the process of doing away with the nation state and leading us into a one world governing body. So then they said, well, globalization, in the next article I'll use international community or a global community or a global citizen. In other words, they keep jumping from different phrases, trying to lull you back to sleep. And you say, wow, I've seen that happen. And I never realized that's what they were doing. They're lulling me back to sleep so that they can push their agenda on me, and I'm not going to buck the system. If they say world government and the loss of sovereignty, people here in the United States say, whoa, hold on. We signed a Declaration of Independence, not interdependence, and we're not going to stand up for that. But if they say international community, we go, okay, international community. The international community just issued sanctions against Iran. And we're like, hey, cool, international community. Because everybody likes to be part of a community. But at the end of the day, it's world government in action. And so there will come a time when the Antichrist takes control of that world government. Global citizen, everybody thinks, global citizen, that's pretty cool. I'd like to be able to travel and not have to mess with passports, this, that, and the other. Global citizen, that sounds neat. Global citizen is a horrible thing. They're trying to draw you into that global governing system. So just because they don't say world government doesn't mean that's not what it is. Now, believe it or not, I said all that. I wanted to give you a history lesson on what's really going on. I could talk about this for days. But I wanted to tell you what's happened in the minds of these global thinkers, globalists, liberal internationalists. What are they thinking about? Their one goal in life is a world government. And so one of the ways they're spinning that, and they're trying to get you scared to the point where you will, they can control your business and your home and everything, every aspect of your life is global warming. Now, I know we talk about this all the time, but we've got to, because this is going to affect everybody if we don't buck the system. And look at what Donald Trump's doing. He's pulling us out of the Paris Climate Agreement and things like that, which has been great. But we got to be careful because we don't want anything to fly in under the radar. And that's kind of what's happening in this next segment I'm going to tell you about. So they realized, they took what's happened over time, and people who are in politics running things, they realize I can't say certain terms because the voters are going to say, whoa, 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 I'm not into that. And they might vote them out of office. So to avoid political radiation poisoning, they avoid certain terms. Well, early on, they started with global warming, the scare tactic, the human-induced. They're putting off so much so much carbon emissions that they're causing the planet to warm up. You've seen Michael Mann's hockey stick graph and all this stuff in Al Gore's original movie. And it's just, they were saying the Earth's warming to the point where it's just going to, there's going to be climate catastrophes. Well, people found out, and they did the research, and they found out that global warming was a hoax. Over the last 20-some years, it hadn't warmed any. No global warming. So they thought, well, that's a hoax. So these people who are pushing this agenda, they changed it to climate change. They said, well, we can't prove global warming, so let's just change it to climate change. Everybody under our sphere of influence, don't use the term global warming, use climate change. And all these big newspapers that Donald Trump would refer to as fake news, they quit using the term global warming, and all of them went to climate change. Well, now people have gotten smart, did the research, and said, hold on a second. The climate has been changing ever since the Lord created the earth 6,000 years ago. It's changed every day, and it's going to change every day. And we're going to have hurricanes, and we're going to have tornadoes, and this, that, and the other. It's just normal. So we can't really use climate change anymore because people are on to us. So now what they're saying is, we're just going to say weather extremes. They've all changed that. Now listen to this. Remember how Strobe Talbot said, can't use global government. That brings on political radiation poisoning. So we got to do away with terms like global government. Just use international community and things like that. Things to dumb it down to where the population won't get stirred up. Well, now the Guardian reports that the U.S. Federal Department a U.S. Federal Department is censoring the use of the term climate change. Their emails are telling us this. So the staff at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, have been told to avoid using the term climate change. Originally it was global warming. Now it's climate change because people are getting smart and they're on to them. And they're saying you got to avoid the term climate change in your work. And so with the officials, they instructed to reference weather extremes instead of climate change. So you see what they're doing? The same thing that Strobe Talbot learned. You can't use global government or world government. You got to dumb it down. They're trying to do that now with, instead of global warming, now they went to climate change. Now it's weather extremes. And so a series of emails obtained by the Guardian between staff at the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS, and the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the unit that oversees farmers and land conservation, they show that the incoming Trump administration has had a stark impact on the language used by some federal employees around climate change because Donald Trump believes it's a hoax. And so here comes a new administration in. These governmental agencies said, okay, hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa. We were running at this level and we could use climate change all we wanted to, but Donald Trump now, the President of the United States, doesn't believe in climate change. And people are onto this. He's talked about it being a hoax time and time again. He pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And so he's against this. So we can't really continue to use climate change because people see it now as a hoax. So they've said, you can't use that. You got to use weather extremes now. And a letter from Bianca Mobus-Clune, the Director of Soil Health for the USDA, lists terms that should be avoided by the staff, and they should replace them. And so they actually gave them terms to avoid and ones to replace those. She said climate change is in the avoid category, and it's to be replaced with weather extremes. And instead of climate change adaptation, the staff are asked to use the term resilience to weather extremes. The primary cause of human-driven climate change is also targeted with the term, let's just say, reduce greenhouse gases. And the reduced greenhouse gases has to be blacklisted now in favor of, they're going to say, this is an approved term, build soil organic matter, or increase nutrient use of efficiency. Meanwhile, another blacklisted term is sequester carbon. It's ruled out and replaced by build soil organic matter. You see what they're doing? They're kind of just putting cobwebs everywhere and they're making everything gray so that you really can't put your finger on what they're trying to say. But they're saying it's going to blow up the earth and everything's going to burn up and these huge climate catastrophes are going to happen. But they don't want you to be able to put your thumb on it. So this is what they're doing. Originally, Strobe Talbot, and it's been done throughout time. I mean, people have said, well, I didn't really mean that. When we say world government, we don't really mean world government. We're talking really about an international community where everybody can be involved in. See what I'm saying? They don't want you to know what they're really doing, even though they're not going to, and I'll prove that to you here in a minute. They're not stopping everything they're doing. They're just changing the way they phrase it. So that way you don't get alarmed by it. Because if they come out and said, hey, we're trying to stop global warming, everybody who's smart enough about it says, that's a hoax. We're not paying any attention to that. But if they say, well, we're just going to build soil organic matter, that sounds great. Let's do that. Problem is, they're still pushing their agenda. They're just calling it something different. What are they doing? In the end, they're trying to establish a world governing body, just like is prophesied in Revelation chapter 13.
Jesus prophesied two specific things would occur right before his second
Most
coming.
people have
In
dreamed
this lesson,
of someday
this
walking
shall not
on the
pass.
ground
Irvin
where
Baxter
Jesus walked
discloses
over
what
2,000
those two
years
things
ago.
are and what will happen.
You
He also
don't
proves
have
they
to
are
wait
in the
any
process
longer.
of coming to
Make
pass right
this
now. Are we
the
the
year for
generation
your
that shall not
life-changing
pass until the
experience.
promise of Jesus'
This
second
is your
coming
official
fulfilled?
invitation
To find out, call
to join Judy and me
1-800-IND-TIME.
for
That's
our 2017 Fall End Time
or order
Prophecy
online
Tour.
at
The trip of a
Through the
lifetime
years, we have seen God
is a
perform
severe
miracle after
understatement.
miracle at End Time Ministries.
If you
and
could
we are trusting
travel
God for
to
another season of
any
miracles
place
this summer.
on earth,
So we
your
decided
first
that we
choice
wanted to share
should
our miraculous
definitely be
story and
the
boost
Holy
your
Land.
faith by offering you one of
There
our
is
newest
simply
DVDs
no other
titled A
place
Miracle
like it.
Called End Time for free with
Call
any purchase of
$1-800-END-TIME. That's
$29 or more. To request your copy, call
1-800-363-8463
1-800-END-TIME.
for more
That's
information.
1-800-363-8463
Ask to speak to Holly
and mention the
or
code
Jeff
MIRACLE or
about
order
the tour.
online at endtime.com.
So do you get what I'm saying about people are pushing an agenda, they're pushing the agenda, and at the end of the day, when people get smart, they come on to what they're really doing, they don't change what they're doing, they just change the name. They say, well, I mean, it's not really a world government, it's just we're building an international community that everybody can be a part of. Aren't you happy about that? And now, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has said, look, Donald Trump's coming in. We can't really talk about global warming and climate change anymore because he doesn't believe in that. So we're not really going to change what we're doing. We're just going to kind of change the name, the phrases that we use. In her email to the staff, dated the February 16th, Mobus Clune said the new language was given to her staff and suggested that it be passed on. So it's coming down from on high somewhere. And she writes that, now this is so key, she actually writes in her email correspondence to her staff, we won't change the modeling. In other words, we're not going to change what we're doing, just how we talk about it. And the Guardian actually reported this. And I went through and read the email trail that they had. The lady actually said, look, I've been told we're going to change our terminology. We're not going to change the modeling. We're not changing what we're doing. We're just changing how we talk about it because people are getting on to what we're doing. And Donald Trump's against it. So when we got to give a report to Mr. Trump, we're simply going to say, look, we're just trying to enhance the soil. And it's all deception. The global warming, climate change hoax is a deception. Now, she goes on to say there are a lot of benefits to putting carbon back in the soil. Climate mitigation is just one of them. And that a colleague from the USDA's Public Affairs team gave advice to tamp down on discretionary messaging right now. So they're saying we got to be careful in all these emails and different things we're doing and the terms that we use. We got to be careful with that because people are getting on to what we're doing. We don't want to change what we're doing, so we're just going to change the name. In a separate email to senior employees on January 24th, just days after Trump's inauguration, Jimmy Bramlett, the deputy chief for the programs of the NRCS, said, it has become clear one of the previous administration's priority is not consistent with that of the incoming administration. So he realized as one of the leaders of this agency that President Obama had bought into the global warming climate change hoax. He signed us on to the Sustainable Development Goals in September of 2015, lock, stock, and barrel, pushing it. Donald Trump comes along and says, that's a hoax. He said, that's a Chinese hoax, I think. But he said many times, that's a hoax. There's nothing to that. Climate's always been changing. And he's right. And global warming, which leads to climate change, human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, is a hoax. So this guy comes along and he recognizes that. He says, look, the guy coming in, the current administration coming in, he's nothing like the previous administration. So he says, namely, that priority is climate change. On climate change, the USDA recognized this. He said, he's saying to his team right under him, please visit your staff and make them aware of this shift in perspective within the executive branch. He said, he also added that caution should be used when discussing greenhouse gases. And he said the agency's work on air quality regarding these gases could be discontinued. So he's telling them, we've got to be cautious when we talk about this stuff because this could all be discontinued if we're not careful here. And he says, so other emails showed the often agonized discussions between staff unsure of what was forbidden or not. So you got people that are working on this daily to trying to help with this, and they weren't even sure what terminology they were supposed to use. On February 16th, a staffer named Tim Hafner wrote to Bramlett, and he said, Mr. Bramlett, I'd like to know correct terms I should use instead of climate change and anything to do with carbon. He says, I want to ensure to incorporate correct terminology that the agency has approved to use. So their staff was confused. They're like, hold on a minute. Do we believe in climate change or global warming or what? Just tell me what terms I'm supposed to use that are politically correct so I can write my memos and different things and write articles on this stuff because they were so confused. We don't even know. What I'm saying is Dave Robbins is saying just do the truth. Tell the truth. If you tell one lie one day, then you got to figure out the next 3 days what you told, and it's a big mess when you get 2 or 3 months down the road. You never go wrong by doing what's right. Simply tell the truth. If global warming is real, tell the truth about it. But if it's not real, quit trying to disguise it and say it's a hoax. We're going on to helping people, loving people, and doing God's will in the earth. I mean, let's just throw our cards out on the table here. Let's just tell the truth. You don't have to mask world government. You don't have to mask global warming. Now, on April 5th, Suzanne Baker, a New York-based NRCS employee, emailed a query as to whether staff are allowed to publish work from outside the USDA that use climate change. So all these employees are flipping out because they don't know what terminology to use. A colleague advises that the issue be determined in a phone call, not by email. Some staff weren't enamored with the new regime, with one employee stating in an email on July 5th that we would prefer to keep the language as is, and stressing the need to maintain the scientific integrity of the work. Well, we know there's not much scientific integrity of the work, but the USDA, now I want you to remember this because you'll hear this terminology coming up. You watch. The major news sources that are pushing this stuff, that are bought and paid for here in America, they'll start using these terms. You can just write these down. You'll remember. So the USDA's advice to staff on climate change language, they're saying to avoid climate change and instead use weather extremes. Avoid climate change adaptation and now use the resilience to weather extremes, intense weather events, drought, heavy rain, spring ponding. And avoid reduce greenhouse gases and to use build soil organic matter and increase nutrient use efficiency. You see how that kind of dumbs things down? It gives it a terminology with people can say, yeah, I want to buy into that. Where in essence, early on, I just told you, she said, we're not going to change what we're doing. We're just going to change the terminology. And then they're going to avoid the term sequester carbon, and they're going to, the acceptable term is build soil organic matter. My question today, why do you think they need to change the terminology? Why? If it's real, why do you have to try to hide it? You see my point? Because the global warming message is simply used by those who are pushing a global governing agenda. And some of these people that are asking, some of them may not even know, they don't have a clue what they're doing. They're just saying, we're pushing global warming. Oh, now, the email came from on high. No more global warming. We're going to climate change. And hold on, a couple years later, now we can't do climate change. Now we're going to go to weather extremes. Nobody can put their finger on a weather extreme. I mean, a couple years ago, down here in Rowlett, Texas, they had a huge tornado come through. It was an F5. Was that a weather extreme? Absolutely. Did my Ford F-150 pickup cause that? Or a million Ford F-150 pickups cause that? No, it didn't. It's a hoax, everyone. It is a hoax that they're trying to push because they want to control your life with all the different aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the same world government they're trying to push is prophesied to be in power at the time of the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So you see what's going on. Many people with the USDA, they don't agree with Donald Trump that human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, is a hoax. They realize, just like Strobe Talbot did, that with the term world government or global government, that people are onto their scheme or onto their hoax. So what do? They simply change the name. They're not changing what they're doing. They just change the name so people in society will accept it. Donald Trump has repeatedly questioned the accuracy of climate change research, infamously suggesting that it's part of an elaborate Chinese hoax. And the president has started the process of withdrawing the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement. He instructed the Environmental Protection Agency to scrap or amend various regulations aimed at cutting greenhouse gases, and has moved to open up more public land and waters to fossil fuel activity. So the nomenclature, or the choosing of the names for things of the federal government, also has shifted as these new priorities have taken hold. Mentions of the dangers of climate change have been removed from the websites of the White House and the Department of Interior. So this is a very good thing. While the EPA scrapped its entire online climate section in April, pending a review that will be updating the language to reflect the new approach of the new leadership. Those that believe in a world government, whether you call them a globalist, a liberal internationalist, or the global establishment, it doesn't matter. They're pushing this global warming climate change scam as one of the efforts to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. And the development goals adopted by every nation, including President Obama in September of 2015. The ultimate outcome of the sustainability agenda is a massive transformation of the social, political, and technological, the culture and behavioral processes that impact how mankind produce and consume. In other words, sustainability affects every aspect on earth, and green initiatives, every aspect of life on earth, I should say, and green initiatives attempt to modify human behavior to reward us really for how we eat, work, travel, and play more sustainably. Sustainable development is simply a catchphrase. Rather than world government, this is another one, sustainable development. It's a catchphrase used by activists and global governing agencies included in the implementation of Agenda 21 and now Agenda 2030, which according to the UN's own website, Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system. Can't you see, everyone? Sustainability, number 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals is to curb carbon emissions and to take control of the climate. That's actually a goal of the world government, but it's all a hoax. What are they trying to do? All they want to do in the end is to control your life and to control my life. And do you see how integrated it was into the system, into the United States? The U.S. Department of Agriculture now has said, because Donald Trump comes in and sees it as a hoax, we're not going to change pushing this. We're just going to change the terminology. We're going to hide it. And so I wanted to show you today how far we are off into this global governing system. The world government prophesied to be in power at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.